Sports Show presents House
Hello,
of
and you're all very welcome to House of Rugby. My name is Máire Treasa Ní Dhubhghaill, and joining me on this week's show to look back on round 3 of the Guinness Six Nations are Johne Murphy and Lindsay Peat. How are we both doing?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, you got in
really
from the
good.
rain for a little while anyway.
Yeah, this is 2 weeks in a row now we've telepathically showed up in the cardigans. Mine's not as bright as yours, but listen.
We're so in sync, Lindsay. We'll start by looking back at Ireland's win, another bonus point win for Andy Farrell's side. That's their third bonus point win on the bounce. Now, it's been labelled clunky, sloppy, underwhelming in some quarters. Are we being overly critical now, Lindsay?
A little bit. I've thought about this, right? And I'm like, right, on one side I've been a player and an athlete, and you're kind of like, you know how hard it is to come up against those teams that make it difficult. Like I thought Wales were excellent in their defensive setup. Their tackle tech, their chop tackles were ridiculous, which means they're chopping at source, which means they can keep a lot of players on their feet. They're hold and fold. I just thought they were excellent, and they made life really, really difficult for Ireland. Now, we were also sloppy at times, and when we were putting phase together, we were far superior. But then there was times we had just these, I don't know, inconsistent moments which aren't like us, and those moments will come back to bite us in the arse against maybe the likes of England, who are very tough at home, and then Scotland, who could come to Ireland in the last round with a lot of confidence. So it's kind of, you're looking into the future, but we're getting over. We were good. And Johne, I don't know Andy Farrell. I call him Faz. I think it's cool. We're you know, in my eyes, we're bosom buddies, because I think he seems very like myself. You're so hard and you have this expectation. He is ruthless. If I was a player and I was him, knowing how capable we can be, and we could have demolished Wales, I would be probably a little bit upset. But at the end of the day, we're still knocking records out of the park. We're still on track to be the most tries scored, the least points conceded. Could be possible back-to-back Grand Slams. So I'll be forgiven if we come out on the right side after the 16th of March, when hopefully we are, foreseeing Grand Slam champions. But it's a long way to go, and I think that's where you're kind of looking at it. There's still bigger challenges to come. But
I think it's because we've set this bar so high for this Irish team that even with the bonus point win, if we're a small bit off the clinical, I suppose, standards that we expect from this team, it just feels a bit flat. How do you feel about their performance a few days on, Johne?
Look, I think it was what everyone is saying. It was a bit clunky, it's a bit inaccurate at times. But I think you have to give credit to Wales. There was one ball and play set that I think lasted kind of nearly over nearly 6 minutes. And the one thing that Ireland are so good at are those ball and play sets and punishing teams in terms of how tired they get then in that space. Like, it's one of the reasons that they do so well against the bigger sides, France. But to be fair, Wales stayed in it, and they had an opportunity to kick the ball out a couple of times, and be it through inaccuracy or not, they didn't. The ball stayed in play, and they ended up getting a turnover towards the end. And that's kind of unlike other teams, because they don't have the capacity to go that kind of distance with Ireland. But it was just a bit, you describe it as kind of a potentially a kind of, slow performance. It just lacked, it lacked a tiny bit of energy. The atmosphere was probably off a small bit. They didn't have a lot to feed off then. The players, that can all affect them. But I think the biggest thing was how they ended the game. To the clock in the red, to hold the ball for that period of time, and then to get that bonus point try, gives them, 6 points. They're 6 points, ahead of everyone going into, 2 games. So they have a proper chance, whether Grand Slam or not, but they're kind of probably odds on to win it, to win a championship regardless of what happens. One win probably gets them that. So, it was kind of up and down, and I think they'd be frustrated with their discipline, particularly in the second half, and kind of how that flipped. It particularly, what Wales gave away in the first half, and then it just completely flipped. So they have to work on their pictures there, and that allowed Wales to stay in the game, probably more so than anything else. So, but all very, very fixable, and something that going to Twickenham, you imagine, would put in a lot better performance from in the overall.
Ireland felt completely in control in the first half, and probably felt going in at halftime that they should have been further ahead. Why couldn't they kick on? Was that down to the defensive effort from Wales, or was it inaccuracy on Ireland's side?
I think it's a combination. Like, I watched the Welsh players, so they drop tackles were excellent, but they stayed lying on the ground. When they weren't in the way of the ball, but they did slow the support play to clear that ruck. They did make that ball really, really slow for Gibson Park, and that really impedes on the style Ireland want to play. So we rely on quick ruck ball, no more than Leinster at 3 to 5 seconds. That's what you're looking at, moving that ball, because you want to isolate whether they've made poor hold and fold decisions, whether there's an isolation because players haven't folded in. So you're trying to look at those mismatches, whether you're outnumbering teams or you can take them on one, and just continue to punch the holes, because the quicker you can punch holes, it's so hard to get up on your feet and get back in a defensive line and keep hitting tackles. Like, it's ridiculous. So Ireland had to work hard as well. They had to work very, very hard. Their tackle count, there was a lot of guys in double figures. I think Caelan Doris made 21 tackles, worked very, very hard, but we're probably not. We are used to working hard on one side of the ball, but then we reap the rewards on the opposite side. So we work really hard in D, and then we attack teams. I'd be very surprised it wasn't longer, actually, that ball and play that you're talking about. It was kicking, and I was like, so that really showed actually the fitness of Wales. I thought they were exceptional, because they also, not only did they bring work rate, they brought physicality. And it was just a pity they didn't have anything to offer when on an attack. But I mean, when you're taking a young side with very little experience, just over 400 caps, cumulatively throughout the team, you can only work on one side of the ball. And I think if you can work on D, keep teams out, then you can hopefully live on maybe scraps on the attack. But certainly impressed with a lot of their players. I really liked Wainwright. I thought Frawley could have been true for that little chip and chase. Wainwright worked back, and then he gave an absolutely exceptional kick. Cameron Winnett, he looks like he's only made his confirmation, a bit like Caputo. And I was like, this lad is going to be absolutely blown over. But he was exceptional. Like, he was really exceptional. Then thought he was going to go off because he got a bit of a cut in the eye and he's a back, and they can be all three. But I just thought, with the time Gatland's had and the huge clear out, they've done themselves really proud over the last 3 games. But yeah, I think they were cute, and I think Ireland will be disappointed. I just think we let ourselves down at certain times. I knew it would be a tough first half, but I thought in the second half they just kick off and Wales would just kind of give up, and they never did. They never did. They were hard to kill off.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of positives for Warren Gatland to take from this result. But looking at positives from Ireland's perspective, Andy Farrell mentioned their defence afterwards, and they've only conceded 3 tries in the competition so far. As Lindsay said, they had to make 190 tackles in that game. What do you like about how Ireland line out, and how they go about their business in defending?
They just look very comfortable there. Like, even when Wales were kind of hammering in on their in the Irish red zone where they're defending their own try line, they just look very comfortable. 2-man tackles in, they slow the ball down, and they keep on driving them back. They haven't necessarily gone. People were wondering at the start of the championship what Nienaber's influence would be on the Leinster lads going in. They haven't necessarily brought as much line speed as Leinster are looking at bringing, but they're making good decisions, particularly in and around behind the shape. So if they're running off 9, their kind of third defender is set at that point. They're allowing someone to push in through, and they're getting a lot of rewards there. But they're continuously making their tackles, forcing them to ground, and they're just eking out yards, putting them back. But they looked very, very comfortable there. Obviously the yellow card and the penalty try, that probably whether it's a penalty try or not, he definitely changes his mind. It's fairly black and white in the rule book. He did change his mind. There were people there, might be a bit of a harsh call on the penalty try, but in general they just look so comfortable in their system, and they've really brought that forward over the last, Simon Easterby's done an incredible job there, but it's just how comfortable they are and how fit they look to be able to do it over and over and over and over
and
again.
with change of personnel as well.
And everyone is just so comfortable in that space. They all know their job, they all know who they're lining up against, and then if someone their communication is must be off the charts, because if someone pushes through and gets out of the line, he's automatically covered inside and outside by the 2 lads he's left in his connection. So it's just how comfortable they all are, and to be able to do it for long ball and play sets, just to their transition from attack back into defence on turnovers. It's just so comfortable. It's just seamless in terms of how they do it.
England and Scotland, if they're looking at that, will they see any chinks in the armour?
Well, just to build on Johnny's point, I think it was an example of actually James Lowe against Italy. So I think Crowley was on his inside and he looked like he was outnumbered, but he shot out of the line. But you can see him that he doesn't make a decision. He actually stays up on his feet till really, really late to see if he had to actually scoot out to the extra men on the wing or did he have to make the tackle, and he actually ended up making a gain line tackle. Now, I thought that was exceptional. It builds on, I think the comms must be off the charts because it looked effortless. So sometimes, you know, the deer in headlights when you're kind of mismatching, you normally go soft. But obviously, their system A is so clear in what their game plan is, and then B, obviously the comms to say you have license to go. And obviously Crowley then must have said like he could slot in behind him to cover that tackle, and then obviously the full back will come in to cover that in the line if they have to as well. So that probably adds on to their I suppose when things are effortless like that, so game plan and comms, you're not actually exhausting, you're working more efficiently in defence, and that what
and it's
creates
clarity, isn't it?
Oh, it's huge. And when you have that, you actually enjoy D, and they look like they're enjoying D. Like when you have that clarity around, you're actually hungry to make tackles. You're hungry to get back up on your feet, and you're hungry just to put the opposition back on their arse behind the gain line. That actually instills huge momentum and grinds the opposition down mentally, and just, you know, invigorates yourself and keeps recharging the energy. But is there any chinks in the armour for coming up against it? Well, I think for me now, line out was poor. We had a couple of overthrows. It was the first time, like, I thought, right, overthrows, first one or two, absolutely, you're going to maybe have that until the hooker gets his thrown right. But the timing with the throw and the jump was very off and consistently so. So that would be a key area when you've a Toje in there. And what's his name, Ollie, the second row,
Ollie Chisholm.
Yeah, Ollie Chisholm in there, who are big guys, get up off the ground. I think they'll be studying our set piece because that really, I think, caused a bit of problems. You know, what was really good launch ball for the previous two test games, it kind of really interrupted our momentum considering the scrum was so good. So I think they will absolutely target that, and I think they'll target the breakdown if they're going to pick anything up from the Wales game. And Italy kind of made it a bit of a dogfight as well at the breakdown. I think they'll target those two. And then usually with P. Romani, who likes to fight with a pillowcase, they'll probably attack him as well. So I think there are areas, you know, we're not great when we slow the ball. You know, we kind of sometimes look like we ran out of ideas. We were relying on the likes of, you know, Crowley was probably quiet. Did he control the game as much as 10? That was probably his first test really to see how he was going to be on the management side of things. But look, the bomb squad come on. I thought they added great energy. Ryan Barrett, only that offload, if he could have got it, he made a great break. So I think we're still in a good spot. I think they will be areas, and we've 2 weeks now to fix it. Yeah,
the bench had a huge impact, didn't it, Johnny, when it came on the scrum dominance. We were speaking a few weeks ago about Andrew Porter and I suppose the narrative around his role when it comes to the scrum and what the referees, I suppose the pictures that he's painting. They were completely in control against Wales. Have they changed the narrative a small bit, do you think, when it comes to the scrum?
Yeah, well, I think it's something that's been spoken about a lot across all media channels, and it's something that you know, the referees are probably being forced to notice. And it was clear on Saturday that it was who's going forward, and some referees, regardless of pictures that they see, they have a view that once you're dominant and you go forward, then you get the rewards. There's not a lot of change, and you look at other people in their review of the game, and his pictures are very similar between the kind of quarter-final against New Zealand to what they were on Saturday, but it's then down to interpretation. But I think that there is enough chatter about it, and there's obviously communication like every week between the referees, between coaches and referees, and they do all of those conversations earlier in the week, so they're seeking clarity on that. What pictures can he paint to be better? And I think now it's probably, you know, the referees are being forced into not having preconceived ideas and looking at the matchups 1v1 in those positions and trying to make clear calls around if a bind drops or someone loses their bind, rather than it being on, you know, it's an easier decision for them if someone elbows drop or they drop their bind or that, rather than if someone's going forward but his hips are out, or, you know, what's this? I think they're probably looking for those and trying to get those get out. But everyone's been talking about it, so it's human nature. The refs are obviously standing up and having a look at it as well.
Speaking of elbows dropping, did you see the picture?
I did, yeah.
Peter O'Mahony holding his elbow up.
Yeah, and I was trying to put myself in that position. Well, one, you'd be grateful, But like, I did notice that because obviously I played loose, so I used to always prefer a long bind, because if you're up against a big tie head, I used to use it's different with women, but I used to use nearly their hip bone as like, torque for me, so I could really lock that elbow out, and then it'd keep me somewhat sane. On 50% of me now, I've obviously a big set of hips that I'd be relying on my flank to help me out there. But I do agree, similar to Mr. Porter, when you're in the referee's bad books, you're not given that leniency. You really have to win them back. I think we spoke about this before on the previous show, and he's done well. Like, he was probably unlucky. We probably didn't get enough reward with how dominant we were in the scrum, but he was unlucky on one where we wheeled, and he probably wanted to really show that off, and you get to a place of comfort and you just want to go for it. But he'll thank Peat, but we're probably lucky we didn't get called for that.
What about him throwing the boot away?
Yeah, I was like, oh Jesus, we have our own Joe Marler here now. He won't thank me for that. But it was a bit of crack, and you know what? I was at the game, and I do agree. I think like there was a little cohort there of Welsh fans up on the upper stands in their little daffodils, and they were great crack, and they were starting singing. There was a bit of rendition of Fields of Athenry, but nothing really picked up. And I think if we do come down to it, well, regardless, when we get back home in Scotland in the Aviva in the last round of the championship, I think if you're at the match, and that hopefully the players will give us something to cheer about, and vice versa, because the place is absolutely electric when it's there. So yeah, it was a bit subdued. Now at the same time, I wasn't singing because I was so intent to play in every game, so I mean, I have to hold up my own hand, so I'll have to make sure I start singing now if I'm there the next day.
Maybe it's hard to get up for a game when the result really is never in doubt. But looking at you mentioned the penalties, so looking at things that they'll be focused on ahead of England. So they played 20 minutes of that game with 14 men, and discipline is an area that has come up before for Ireland. Like, they've given up 37 penalties so far, averaging 12 per game. Is there one area in particular where you're seeing Ireland concede, or is it individual errors?
Probably, something that they need to be better on is, I think around the ruck area. They need to make sure that they've good entry points into that, because teams are looking at them, because we try and create so much our ball to be so quick. We have to make sure our entry points are good, and then in that, it's stopping anyone. Like Tommy Raphael is something that was a positive after the weekend. Is probably one of the best groundhog sevens in any of the 4 home nations, and like, he didn't get a sniff at the weekend, so that's something that they need to layer on as well. But I think it's just their overall pictures that they can be better on. They probably want to get that number down underneath 10, if not 8. And then I think kind of in and around that 8 to 10 mark at international level is where you need to be. But it's also where they're giving the penalties away is really important. That you don't want to give away too many in your kind of in between the 10s, because that's giving teams, easy entrance, and they give them an opportunity to launch inside your 22. So I think it's the area that they can kind of push the boat out a bit more, that they don't want to give them away in between those 10s with teams that have good mauls or good launch platforms is a big thing.
And I think that would be a key against England.
Yeah.
Because if you look at England now, obviously there's a lot of criticism coming in from that. On one hand, they want to change their style of play, but on the other hand, they're getting wins because they're taking the oppositions in discipline, and they're kicking penalties. So George Ford has been knocking on, and he did it at the World Cup as well. So they were very smart in how they manage games and how they manage teams, and looked probably at their own area of weakness and where they could, I suppose, target teams and get on top. And if we're in disciplined in our, what we call, or Johnny would call the red zone, so kickable areas, which he's just mentioned there, that we will be on the back foot. Yeah, then if you're down to a yellow card, I do think we struggled at time on the maul. Obviously we got the yellow card for Tig changing his bind. Then James Ryan, the same thing. Now that was a team yellow, so it was just continuous, but we seem to go in spurts. So if we're going to go in these spurts of indiscipline, I think that is another area England will target, because they are big, they are a big unit. If they get in and they will maul against us, they will cause us problems, and they'll just keep chipping away. And like you said, it's very hard then to stay on side, because when you're really pinned back on your 5 metre line, you have no momentum to push them back. You are relying on really disciplined timing of double tackles and pushing them back and really working hard. So yeah, I think they need to be cleaned up, and no international team is successful. Well, no team will be successful if you go into double figures with penalties.
They're probably happy to give away, not happy, but content to give away 1 or 2 penalties because of the pressure that they put on teams, they are competing the whole time. But just as long as Lindsay was saying that it's not in these clusters.
Yeah, and I think it's when to push the boat out and when not to push, to be on the line. They seem to be on the line and go past the line a bit too much, and their D is so good that they can afford to be a bit more patient at picking their times, picking their moments, because their D is so, and you already spoke about how comfortable they are in that D, so they're like, fine, you can have the ball, you know, but it's choosing and picking the moments when to go after it. And like you say, like, you know, Lindsay already said it, a team yellow for Ryan, it's then, okay, well, we've given one away, they're in our 22, let's just stick to script here, get good shape on our D, keep coming off the line, and then pick and choose your correct moment on that. There's a, like Gibson Park, and what they do very well, Gibson Park got penalised for kind of crawling through the ruck. It's their work post tackle, particularly on their tackler assist, that they're excellent at, and they force an extra cleaner or two to come into that, but they're getting penalised a bit there by pushing the boat out. So it's clear there's comms there for Gibson Park's one, just picking out one example. He's like, stop, and he's crawling through. You're not allowed to crawl through in your hand. So when he's in that position, he's already attracted one guy. He doesn't need to continue out the far side of the ruck, because that's where he's given away the penalty. It's just being on the line and trying and picking and choosing your moments when to go over. When you go over, sometimes you get away with it, sometimes you don't. But it's to not continuously push that barrier from a discipline perspective.
Yeah, it's just finding that balance. There were a lot of strong individual performances, Lindsay, on Saturday. Who stood out for you?
I thought Bundyaki and Robbie Henshaw were absolutely excellent in the centre. Robbie Henshaw is back to his best. I listened to his post-match interview, and I think it was Aisling Farrelly from Off the Ball asked him, you know,
Aisling O'Reilly.
Aisling O'Reilly, sorry, Aisling. She asked him who, you know, you're in the form of your life. And it is key. He just said it's just about getting consistency of games, and the consistency of games and being, you know, performing builds his confidence, and you can absolutely see that. Like, he was key, other than the little, he's obviously big paws and the ball hit off him, so he didn't know where the ball goes in. It happens to the best of us, but other than that, he was absolutely exceptional. His defensive reads, his footwork on attack, he's just been making gain lines since the start of the championship. You know, he was key to was it Calvin Nash's try against France, you know, his offload off the ground to Caelan Doris, and who shifted the ball. So I thought he was excellent, and I thought Bundy was a little wrecking ball in the first half as well, especially when we were struggling to kind of get momentum. He was certainly key to that, and I just thought if Kieran Frawley needs a shout out, I just thought, you know, he did the basics exceptionally well, and I think he was, as I would have thought myself prior to the game, Warren Gatland is gonna you know, target him, because he's new in, he's big shoes to fill. You know, Hugo Keenan is world class, so I thought he did things very well, and I thought at times he actually started to build in confidence, and he stepped into that 10 position, which was nice. You know, they had that kind of tandem working with Crowley where he could step in, and their understanding when, say, Frawley caught high balls, then you could see Crowley covering the backfield, because I think there was definitely one kick where it got turned over and it was straight back into the backfield to put us under pressure. So now James Lowe is kind of a different animal. He kind of nonchalantly sauntered back and decided to take on two Welsh fellas just to show off. But yeah, I think it's key. Just on that previous point of the breakdown, like, there's times actually I thought we could have gone after certain breakdowns, we didn't. Like, there was a lovely kick chase from Calvin Nash, and he made a great tackle. I can't remember who it was, but like, at that side, when we're winning gain, like, we should be piling in to counter ruck, and we kind of didn't. It was just Josh Van der Vlier. Then there's other times where McCarthy's kind of forcing kind of counter ruck, or the ball is there, and
what's that down to? Decision making?
Yeah,
just on the fly.
Yeah, sometimes, like, if you're going to really, you know, usually it's not going to be in the first couple of phases. Like, it's going to be kind of phases 4, 5, 6 where, like, oppositions are running out of numbers, and that's when, like, Johnny makes a great point, we do put teams under pressure to commit more players. So if they're committing to the first, second, maybe third ruck, then they're going to run out of numbers unless they're really working their arse off. So that's kind of when you're deciding to be disciplined and attack. But the aggression of Porter and McCarthy, and we can see that they were two of the highest. And listen, again, this is from personal experience. You want to make things happen. But in rugby, definitely one of my stern learnings is you have to nearly wait for the opportunity to come to you and make those better decisions. And I think in the next 2 rounds, they will be key for us.
on Frawley, he scored a try on his first Six Nations debut. Did you like what you saw from him? I suppose he wasn't put under the pressure that we expected him to be put under in the backfield.
Yeah, I was very impressed. I think what he did, and Lindsay already mentioned it, was the ability to play both sides of the ball, and having 2 10s on the pitch allows you to do that. He popped into that blindside role very well, organised. Did a couple of really good interchanges where he might be at 10 and Crowley's outside him and vice versa. All in all, you'd be very happy with it. And I think in general, his backfield cover was good. Scores a nice try, in the second half. Wasn't really tested, but all in all, you'd be very happy. Good, solid performance. But I did really like, from an attacking perspective, what he gives by being able to play both sides of the ball, and that's something a bit different to what Keenan gives you. So it's an opportunity there. Even if they wanted to change up the bench and go 6 and 2, he can go on in the backfield and he can cover everyone else. You can move things around. That gives you an added layer on your attack that defenders are going to have to stick on the blind. Creates more space out wide, and particularly in the system that we play, having the forward really in the 5 metre channel and sticking to that 5 metre channel, it just gives us so much width and forces them to mark both sides.
He tried to isolate that, him and Crowley, didn't they, with the little chip across. He's an exceptional pass, isn't he? Like, for the length of his pass and how flat it can stay, you tried to really, because Wales's line speed was good, so obviously you're trying to, that second line of attack being really deep negates that, but obviously then the isolation that we saw in the 5 metre, and we did try to exploit that, but like Wales' scramble defence as well was excellent. They've done a lot of work on it, obviously, Wales, and you could see that, and as I said, it's testament to them. But after Italy's performance the weekend, for all their endeavour, they could be easily the wooden spoon guys, which I think would be unfair.
Yeah, it's great that we're just on the players and the personnel that Ireland have, and I suppose when you were speaking about Robbie Henshaw and Bundyaki and Gary Ringrose is expected to be back fit, that we're building this depth the whole time, and there are a few, I suppose, decisions to be made ahead of England.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think that it's how comfortable, we've already spoke about how comfortable everyone seems to feel within their defensive system. It's how easy, people are fitting into the slots, whether they come in, whether they're on the bench, they start, they're out of the squad, and then they come straight back in. You look at Stuart McCluskey's involvements for that tackle that forces the turnover that gets us ball back towards the end, and that's someone that probably hasn't had great club form, but he's been really good when he's come into Ireland. You look at Calvin Nash and his work rate off the ball. Like, he's the final pass for James Lowe's try. He's nearly, the dimensions of rugby, which is only 55 metres off his wing, but he's doing that all the time. And they just seem to have a squad now of 28 to 32 guys that can slot in at any stage. And you look at Ollie Jaeger, like, he wasn't even in the initial squad. He was one of the guys that was brought in as a development player, and he slotted in seamlessly when he came off the bench. So yeah, everyone just seems to get it. Whatever the coaching staff are doing, there doesn't seem to be any confusion. It's so different to England. Like, everyone knows, the top 34, 35 players in the country know what they're trying to do, how they're trying to do it, and when they're asked to do it, they do it themselves. So everyone just seems to get it. And it's great to watch and see that the depth that they are building.
And Tigey's back. Tigey Furlong's back playing well. We players back playing well. I thought Kelleher did exceptionally well when Sheehan went off. Then Porter's lasting 72 minutes, I think it was, before the time Cian Healy comes on, because they're just in a great place, and they've so many options. Even Bard comes on at back row, but you could you slot him in at second row if worse came to it? Absolutely, you could. So
the 6-2 split seems to be working. Will we see it again against England?
I wouldn't be surprised if we did, because England are big units, so it'll be more so again, I think, to get fresh impetus in. It'll probably come down to, again, the back. So yeah, I think with the utility players we have, it comes down to who's available, but I would see him going possibly 6-2 for England and then back to 5-3 against Scotland.
Ireland will know they have they have a few more gears in them, and they'll want to bring it up another level again when they face England in Twickenham. Will we see them change their game plan in any way to get over and exploit that space in that rush defence that we see from England?
Not really, because I think that they've shown in previous years against South Africa about their short passing game. They play the most short passes of any team in the world, really, and short passes mean you can't bring line speed because there's no ball in air time. It's there, and you're forcing the blitz to make a decision on two players that are running into two channels, be it inside and outside shoulders. I don't think so. I think with their short passing game and how they're set up in their system, it kind of their 3-2-1-1, it allows them create soft shoulders, and then on a blitz, if you manage to get soft shoulders once in a phase of 5, regardless of how much gain line they've got over the first 4 phases, when they have to retreat, then it's the speed of ball that allows you then go to the edge, and that's where you really catch the blitz defences out, and I think they're just set up to do that. And then their kicking game, particularly with holding the forward in that 5 metre channel, they can always go to the air to kick to that space that is there anyway on a blitz. So I don't think so. If they went away and trying to throw long balls and different things, that's where the blitz can each up, because ball and air time allows you to make good decisions. But when it's there's 3 or 4 or 2 short passes, you're always guessing, and it's very hard to control your feet with the amount of line speed that England are trying to bring. For parts, they haven't really got there yet, but they seem to be doing it. And I think England's big problem is, from a back's perspective, Van der Merwe's first try, that's sinful D by who is potentially one of the best 13s in the 4 home nations, but they bring way too much speed there, and Henry Slade making that decision and he's engaging with Finn Russell's eyes is not the one person in World Rugby. You don't want to do that because his sleight of hand is so good, and to play that, it's just it just seems for me they seem to be bringing it at the wrong time, and that's just a learning. They just have to get used to when and when not to bring it. But it's been poor so far from an overall from England.
Well, chatting about England, Scotland now, it finished 30-21. We saw English dominance early on. Would you credit Scotland in the way that they came back and took control of that game, or were England, were they, I suppose, architects of their own downfall, the way they let Scotland back into the game?
Yeah, when obviously Johnny said there, so England don't have they're building the clarity and the system for their D, and when they get it right, they're going to be probably a force to be reckoned with. So they're really good when they're comfortable in that when everything is I suppose predictable, for the want of a better word. So they're grand in that setup. When it went to broken play and they started making line breaks, they're at 6s and 7s and they can't make a decision. So there's no comms, there's no clarity around that. There's poor decisions. Now Van der Merwe is an exceptional athlete. He's 1 try off, I think, equaling Stuart Hogg's record, and then 2 obviously, which I can see him possibly doing by the end of the championship. Now Stuart Hogg is a long time playing for Scotland, so to absolutely take that title and smash it, is testament to the athlete he is. But yeah, they allowed Finn Russell to get in the game. He's exceptional when he's opened up and he can make those choices. He's just he's like a point guard on a fast break, in basketball, and he's a joy to watch. So I thought Scotland were well worthy of their win in the end. So I think it was a combination of coming out what they were comfortable with, but obviously then allowing the kind of game to suit Scotland and their players, and they just took over that and took advantage of it, to be honest.
Yeah, I just think England were, in my opinion, were definitely makers of their, architects of their own downfall. You look at Van der Merwe's, I think his second try and the turnover, that ball goes through 15's hands and it nearly hits him in the face. It's a turnover where they actually have an opportunity to score because it's one pass. They have 3 guys outside. It's kind of like a 4v3 or a 4v2 on the outside, and they just don't execute. The first 10 to 15 minutes when they went 10-0 up, they played a really good brand of rugby. They were accurate. They seemed to have a system very similar to Ireland in terms of how they were shaping up. And then they just forgot that. And, you even look at their last try, that's not within a framework. That's just a winger being busy asking 9 to scoot, and then he scores, creates a, something down the short side. That's kind of instinct, but it's not framework, where you look at their first 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and they seem to have a clear framework. When I was watching it, I was going, okay, this is what they're trying to do. They're going to play a bit more, and the setup similar enough to Ireland. They're going to play on top of teams, use George Ford's passing game, and then it just stopped, and their pass, like their basic catch pass, particularly from 13 out, was just so poor in the last kind of 60 minutes that you're like, what's, they
So
just...
is it the execution of the game plan that's letting them down, or do they not have the players to execute the game plan they want?
They do have the players, in my opinion, because you look at what teams like Quins and Northampton
and Exeter,
how they've built, how Rob Baxter has completely transformed and rebuilt there, what Sam Vesti is building in Northampton. All those guys have really, really good form, but he's kind of chopping and changing, and when they get out of that, they go to the air. But Freddie Stewart's not playing, so why are you going to the air when you're not picking your best player who's in the air? What's going on? So, and the English rugby fraternity, and having played over there and knowing the guys and chatting to them over the last couple of weeks, it hasn't been a good run for Steve Borthwick. Yes, he made a World Cup semi-final and was within a couple of minutes of winning. Was that predominantly down to conditions and also probably the draw? I would say yes, but they still look rudderless. And the English public are not necessarily that patient. They're not as bad as the French.
Yeah,
but
they're crying out for change now already. Yeah.
And so they have to nail their colours to the mast a bit. They've been very public about the blitz and what they're doing in D. That's fine. So they're getting allowances there because they know what they're doing and what they're committing to and how long that's going to... But their attack, they look lost. They look... Okay, they go, right, we're going to kick. Oh, no, we're not. Oh, we are. We're going to play. And they look half okay doing both. Which is it, Yeah. And it's a frustration, I think, from the rugby public over there, that there's pressure is going to start to build and build and build because they're not getting better every week. I think that's a frustration from the English rugby public over there.
It's probably frustrating for all of us, really, because you're expecting them to be better, and you kind of...
And they've quality players.
Yeah, they do.
They can pick, and you look at the centre pairing of what it could be when Manu's back fit, or Lawrence, Slade, their back three, and how these guys are shooting the lights out with Bath, with Northampton, with Exeter, Quins. But Dan Cole, I played with Dan. Okay, he is still probably one of the best scrummagers, but who's coming behind him? What are are they going to develop? Are they not? It's just for me, they just seem a bit rudderless at the moment.
Will he make changes? Should he make changes ahead of Ireland? Marcus Smith is due back.
I think at this stage they've nothing to lose. They're not playing for anything now, really. They're playing for pride. They're playing for backing up what they're saying they're doing. And I do agree with Johnny. You look at them week in, week out in European competition, and I think they're absolutely being some of the teams. Exeter are a joy to watch. Quins are a joy to watch. Now, you don't know what they're helter-skelter, but it works for them because that's their game plan, and the personnel that are comfortable in that. And I don't think that's transferring from what is actually what they're displaying in a league that is now up to date with the probably new age standard of rugby and the new age player of rugby, and it's not transferring into their national team, and that's because the likes of Dan Cole and Joe Marler are still there of the old guard and the old systems. If you look at Ireland, everything, even Munster have changed. Their probably speed of ruck is quicker than Leinster's now at the minute, and they're reaping the rewards of being able to play what's in front of them as well as mixing what is their set game plan that they can launch off. So that isn't, and I agree with Johnny, and it's a good point, and at this stage it's probably one that we say just decide on what you're playing. If you're going for a kicking game, pick the personnel that'll play that for you. But you're going to play this expansive rugby that you're, let's be honest, chirping on about. Put your money where your mouth is. Pick the players that'll play that for you and trust them. Because you can't be...
And it will take a little bit of pressure off him as well. If he's saying, look, like Warren Gatland's doing, put faith in the younger players and just a change of
'cause
personnel.
There's a bit of graft for Wales. There was a bit of graft for Wales. I've had a bit of graft for Wales. Grand, I know players that are Welsh, and I know how proud they are as a nation. But there's a bit of graft that they're actually playing, and there's a bit of endeavour, and they're getting stuck in, and they're trying things.
But they're making changes, and they're not afraid to.
100%. Just trust it, and it's not against the players who have served England exceptionally well. But it's time now for, if you want a new breed, you have a new cycle building up to a World Cup, and what is on show and doing very well in Europe for you, trust them and put them into your international setup, because that's the only way it's going to work. That's what's working for Ireland. Our provinces are playing that style of rugby, and it's transferring with a little bit of alteration, but the foundations are there. That's why it's working for us. The same with France. Like, look at the top 14 and how expansive they are. Now, we'll go on to probably Italy and France. They went to a different game plan, but essentially the French Joe.ie goes from their top 14 and it'll transfer into their national team. That's the way life works.
Well, before we move on from Scotland, England, what did we learn about Scotland after that result?
I think they're on a really good vein of form in terms of being confident enough to go win a game. They were clear in terms of where they probably lost their way a bit against France in terms of how they wanted to play. They played, a really good passing game, good kicking game, like good attacking kicking game, particularly for Van der Meer's off turnover. Again, they're holding width and they're kicking to that space rather than the aimless kicking that we saw against France. But I think it was the ability to deal with the pressure of being favourites at home after a loss against England. They had a bit of a slow start, but then when they got into it, they looked very, very comfortable in that. And that was a huge game for them from a mental perspective because of how they lost before against France. They were on a low. They were expecting, in terms of even how they were hoping that it would be a Grand Slam decider, more or less Paddy's Day in Dublin. That's what they were building up to. That's what the talk was. They were going to be Ireland's biggest threat. So there's a lot of pressure on them, and they delivered at home, which was really good. And they'll build more confidence from that. They'll kick on and they'll come here, depending on other results, with potentially a chance of winning it, maybe. But
they probably should have kept playing for the bonus point.
I think that's the thing that, and people, they have to decide then, like, that's the difference between Ireland. Like, there were 9 points down, I think it was 60 seconds left. They're going to win. They need a bonus point there in the context of the thing. If it was flipped to Ireland would keep playing. There'd be no way they'd stop with knowing in terms of what, but they just felt it was good enough just to get a win. I think they need to make that decision on that. They have to be better at that. And it's little things, even you go back to the France game in terms of their initial D setup that allows France get into their half was a bit all over the place. So they just need to get up to that, I think. But that is something that the last kind of minute or two, or last 30 seconds when they kick the ball, you're like, oh, go on, play, just. But look, they got the win, and that was what they needed and what they wanted.
And finally, France-Italy. Oh my God, what a dramatic finish to that game. It finished 13-13, and Italy were so close to beating France at home for the first time in the Six Nations. We'll start with the Garbisi kick. There was so much going on the pitch at the time. Should he have been given another chance to reset the kicking tee and just the shot clock reset again? And
no, I don't think we needed to even reset the shot clock. Obviously, it's counterintuitive to what they wanted the shot clock to do with the rule in place that if it comes off the tee, you can reset it, and there's no French players allowed to move because it's a penalty. Like, just stop, just pause the shot clock. He doesn't have to reap the rewards of getting the full time again. Just let him reset the fucking the ball. Like, it was absolutely ridiculous. But the poor Italians didn't even fight that. Do you know what I mean? No one on the sideline fought it. And the thing about, look, the French they're cute. Do you know, if it's not the video going missing for a replay, they're well entitled, and they will push the laws, and that's up to them. It's up to
the water carrier in the middle of the pitch.
Listen.
But I think that's something, and everyone's talking about the TMO and all of this. That's something that the TMO can come in, because, to be fair to the referee, he's looking at this going, oh my God, this is Italy, and he'll probably deny it, but any human would be going, if this goes over, this is Italy's first ever win in France, right? Okay, then the ball drops off the tee, so he's going, all right. Then he tells the first guy to stop charging, then he tells the second guy to stop charging, and like there's so much going on. Why can't the TMO come in and say, okay, by the way, you can, if he misses, you reset, you go forward 10 metres? Because there's so much going on for the referee in that. And it's like the previous week with the French try. Like, we have to make it easier and use the technology and use that. It is like, it's a good thing for the game to have that, but it has to be used correctly. Yeah. Like, when that happens and it's the final second, I doubt any referee in the world will reset that, because there's just so much going on. And so if the TMO can go, okay, well, that's fine, we don't reset the shot clock, but what we do is if he misses, he gets another go because of X, Y and Z. And then straight away that comes in his ear when the France captain runs charging at him, and he's like, no, the rule is this, this and this. And then no one
because the rule is there.
Well, it's black and white. It's black and white. Like, he should have had another go 10 metres in front, 10 metres close to the post. That's what the rule is.
And he could have taken a breath in between that, and I have no doubt he would have put it over. Like, he was exceptional. Like, Italy broke my heart. My dad's in for he had surgery, and I was up with him and we watched the game, and I'm roaring in the ward. Like, we both were, but I was like, come on, because I suppose the Italians, they were superb in the second half. How they played, I didn't think they were going to be able to keep up defensively. I thought the defence was excellent. They hunted high every time. There was a camera which was kind of wide from up above, and you could see just how brilliant they were at hunting high. So even though France negated initially that kind of blitz defence, they were, they had them covered and cut off the space out wide. So France weren't able to do anything. And then they were so frustrated. They were trying to chip balls, they overpassed balls, it was going out. Like, it was a poor day for France. But yeah, Italy, I thought.
Yeah, it was just agonising for Italy again. And are you seeing enough from them to indicate that they are making progress?
Hugely. Yeah. Menoncello, I always want to call him Lemoncello, but anyway, he was absolutely sublime. Vex was brilliant in the centre. The Garbisi brothers were excellent. Johne was unbelievable. The metres he carried, I thought he worked tirelessly. He was disciplined. He did everything good for Italy on both sides of the ball. I thought initially, I just kept seeing white chairs going into the breakdown. I thought they were going to run out of numbers because they seemed to have to work very hard to look after their own ball. They didn't give away these ridiculous offloads. Do you know, at times the Italian flair seems to ooze through and they just want to give this exceptional pass. But there was a couple of times where I thought the ball was going to be flung, it's going to be turned over, but they just kept it. And they just kept building phases. And the amount of phases they put together, just continuously winning gain line, being disciplined, and then Capuzzo gets over in the corner. I just thought they were brilliant, and I really feel sorry for them because France wanted to go kind of at the jugular, really overpower them. They went away from what their normal game plan is, and I'm not sure it suited them. They just didn't know how to manage it from them, and I'm still not with Jalibert and Luku. I'm still not too sure on them now.
Yeah, what's going on with France? It feels like a ridiculously long hangover.
Yeah, I think they're just I think, when you talk to guys that are playing over there, or you hear what the guys that are playing over there at the moment, what they're saying is like they felt that the World Cup was theirs to win, and I think it's really just taken the complete wind out of their sails. Then, the best player in the world is going to play sevens. It's just been a series of things that has just, and reports would be that Galtier is quite a difficult guy to deal with in terms of, when things aren't going that well. So it's just been a struggle for them, and they're just
He doesn't have a good relationship, does he?
Yeah, it just does, and you wouldn't be surprised if he's, by the end of the tournament he's not there anymore. Given
the president
what's
of
going
the
on,
FFR said Galtier's position is absolutely not in danger, but they're French, that could change in an instant.
It's just, they're just off, and there's just something missing. And whether that's the Dupont spark, or they need someone like Entomac back. They're just not. It looks kind of sour at the moment, really.
When you look back at the World Cup and how they demolished Italy, and it was light and day to what we saw from them on Sunday.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair, like, Italy are really improving. Like, you know, you see what their 20s are doing. They obviously won on the weekend. They pushed Ireland. But, like, in terms of the Six Nations from an under-20 perspective, and even at, say, like 18s, you know, I was with the Irish 18s development squad last summer, and, like, Italy were the best team out of the 4 sides that went, and by a long way.
But it hasn't been.
It hasn't come
on
through yet. And the guys that are playing now at the moment, they're not used to beating France in those kind of melting pot games, where probably from 22 down they are. So when they come, you know, when they're 24, 25, it'll be like, sure, we've done this, you know, since we're teenagers, so we'll just go and do it. And I think that's something that they probably that they are going to see over the next number of years come to fruition, and it'll be great for everyone. But I think everyone with that penalty, they just, you know, they wanted Italy to get over the line, unfortunately, you know.
France, if nothing else, have luck on their side the way they've won the last 2 rounds in the competition. Why aren't we seeing, as you mentioned, the gameplay we see from these talented, skillful players every week in the top 14 and in Europe transferred to the national team? Is there that they're not clear on what style of play they're playing at the moment?
It seems to me like when they get into an arm wrestle that they don't have that kind of, they're not using their forwards to gain momentum again and start their phases going. Like, Ireland will have a plan to launch off, whether that's a line out or a scrum or just building the phases. Like, I'm very surprised because Luca and Jalibert play at Bordeaux, so it's not like that halfback pairing is new either. I certainly think they're missing Dupont after his exhibition on the Seven Circuit when he was questioned that he wouldn't, you know, the Australians, how dare they say he wouldn't be able to transfer at sevens, and then he kind of proved them wrong. Then
Knocked
he obviously
Ireland
broke Irish hearts with his his blindside try. I was like, Jesus Christ, this man. But I do think they're missing his energy. I do think they're missing that. He is the je ne sais quoi there, because he just makes things happen. Like, he does it for Toulouse, he does it for France. But that's no excuse for professional players that are all playing top level rugby in France. It's not like it's a new game plan. But I just think when it gets to that dogfight, they're not able, which is funny, because Sean Edwards there, even their defence is actually lacking. Like, they're not the same team even on the defensive side of the ball as they are in attack.
Ill-discipline is costing them as well.
Because they're petulant. The French can be petulant. They throw their toys out of the pram if things aren't going well, and then it knocked on with, like, you know, just bad decisions, poor kicks, throwing the ball, looking at each other and giving out. The red card did not help, but I mean, even at that, like, how many months are we talking now about the tackle height? Do you know? And there's Dante coming off. No effort. It wasn't obviously the worst of collisions we've seen, but he was stand up, there was no mitigation, and he didn't make an effort to dip. So, I mean, what do you want here? Yeah. Like, it definitely swung the momentum of the game, the red card. I think France would have got over the line and got the win if he stayed on the field, but he didn't. And I just think, they're just lacking now, and it's kind of a spiral, and I think they will continue now. And if they don't kind of hit the brakes, they're going to look at probably, they're saying they're going to be top 2 in the fight with Ireland, and now they could be kind of down 4th, 5th.
Yeah, well, we have a very interesting few weeks ahead. We'll leave it there for today's show. Ireland are in very good position heading into the break week. My thanks to Lindsay and to Johne. In case you didn't know, Joe.ie have a brand new podcast. It's a comedy podcast called You Must Be Joking with Eric Lawler and Willa White. So far, they've had Des Bishop, PJ Gallagher and John Collery as guests. This week's guest is Kevin McGahern, and he'll be on the show on Thursday, so be sure to subscribe and get listening. We'll be back again on House of Rugby next week. Until then, from all of us here, Slán go fóill.
Sports Show presents House of Rugby.